Welcome to the Right Time Podcast. The Right Time with Bomani Jones.
Hi to the bad guy. What's up, kiddos? Welcome to the Right Time with Bomani Jones. My name is Clinton Yates, filling in here on a Tuesday. ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance, and all guests on the Right Time appear via the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Hit me up on Twitter at Clinton Yates, at ESPN Radio. You know the rules. If you step into my mentions with nonsense, I will absolutely embarrass you in front of all your friends, and I will not apologize. Now that we've got that out of the way, let's have a discussion. Today, the website I write for, The Undefeated, unveiled the final top 10 of the top 50 black athletes in history, and number one was one Michael Jeffrey Jordan. A little bit of controversy there. A lot of people talking about how is it possible that Jackie Robinson was second, Muhammad Ali was third. Obviously, this list is flawed. Number one, let's break down what it was specifically just so that you understand. 10,350 adults were asked, by the way, this was in April, 10,350 adults were asked to rank 200 athletes on 20 different surveys. Respondents were asked how great of an athlete each person was or is using a scale of 1 to 10 stars. The athletes were ranked in order based on their average scores to form a top 50 list. Each athlete was ranked on 4 factors: overall ranking, dominance, inspiration, and impact on society. Average scores were calculated from each factor to create a composite score, and athletes were ranked in order by their composite score to determine our final list, which was unveiled today in finality. Later, the Undefeated is going to break out how the public voted, broken down by race, age, gender, education level, and census region. But for now, we're going to talk about the list. Now, let me explain something off the top to everybody, just so that we're clear on where I stand about this as a fan first and as a journalist second and as a radio host third. I don't like Michael Jordan. Simple as that. I don't have a problem with Michael Jordan, but I do not subscribe to him as some long-term stan or fan, and never really did. Did I like Michael Jordan when I was a kid? Sure. Did I respect Michael Jordan when I was a kid? Absolutely. But my dad was one of those guys that was like, no, you're not getting Jordans. Number one, they're too expensive, and B, you might get shot. Which was a real deal thing in the 80s and 90s in D.C., not just some pipe dream scary thing that people actually said, so don't come at me with that. Number two, Michael Jordan ruined my Wizards. All right? Came to the franchise, drafted Kwame Brown, came out of retirement, skipped town, and everything was, burned to the ground. I'm not a huge fan of this guy. Just as a matter of course. Tremendous basketball player, obviously. But for people to tell me that it's unconscionable that he somehow beat out in a public survey Muhammad Ali is completely wild to me. Let's be clear about something. A lot of people did not like Muhammad Ali until he was unable to talk anymore. Jim Brown said that, I believe, on the Dan Le Batard show some years back. His point being, let's not act like this dude was some super popular guy for the entirety of his career. That's one component of this. The secondary component of it is this. He represents something to a very specific swath of America that I think must be identified here. There's a lot of people in this business now who defend every single thing Ali was about because it was their first eye-opening experience to what most of Black America dealt with every single day. And it was brought to them in a package that was the greatest boxer they'd seen up until that point, probably the greatest orator they'd seen up until that point, and a heroic figure in terms of the manner in which he presented everything he did. So they're never going to fall out of love with what Ali represented to them. But the connection that so many people force themselves to make between this notion of if you are not down with the revolution or if you are not speaking up against the man, then you are somehow unable to make a major social impact as a black person? Come on now. Number one, that's deleterious of so many different things that our people have done over the course of time. And number two, that's intellectually dishonest. So when you tell me that all Michael Jordan did was sell some shoes, well, A, you see how many shoes he sold, my guy? You take a look at that brand recently? You want to understand what's going on there? Don't tell me that didn't have social impact. Positive, negative, political or not, the social imprint of Michael Jeffrey Jordan is major. Nike ain't Nike without Michael Jordan. And Nike pretty much runs everything now. Understand that. Also understand where the NBA fits into all this. When the NBA decided the global market was going to be something important was after the Dream Team became so popular in the 1992 Olympics. We'll get to that later in the show. 25th anniversary shouts to the Dream Team. So think about how these things came together. Jordan's popularity from a marketing and a product standpoint, the popularity of the NBA from a global game standpoint, and thus by extension basketball. And then think about plainly the media world that exists now versus what existed when Ali was in his prime. On a simple numbers, eyeballs, and ears scale, there's no way you can really compete with Michael Jordan. He blew that all out of the water. And as an aside, this is sort of what comes up every single time I talk about who's better at basketball. It's impossible for some people to even take that out of their minds when they think about the actual basketball on the court when it comes to Jordan. Because they can't get the marketing part out of the way. But if you're having a discussion about his overall impact on the globe as a black athlete, oh yeah, that's all there. And this is not to denigrate Ali's legacy by any stretch of the imagination. That would be ludicrous and foolhardy. But don't come at me with this nonsense about how Jordan was just another dude selling sneakers. And because he said Republicans buy them too, that he wasn't out there with a fist in the air, that somehow his social impact was unimportant. Don't be that person that conflates struggle with protest. Don't be that person that presumes that a black person's got to make somebody mad in order for their social impact to be of importance. All right? Jordan, as much as it pains me to say as a personal non-fan of his, is absolutely, tremendously in the argument as the number one most impactful black athlete of all time. There's just no way around that. Now, whether or not you agree with his personal politics or what he chose to do with his money or his pulpit, okay, that's a discussion we can have in the lane of the actual topics themselves. But you can't just take him out of the pool because you happen to not like the shorts he was wearing when he was in it. That just doesn't make sense. You're listening to The Right Time with Bomani Jones. Clinton Yates filling in here on a Tuesday, talking about the top 50 greatest black athletes of all time. The undefeateds list came out, partnered with SurveyMonkey. I want to get your thoughts on this. 888-SAY-ESPN, 888-729-3776. There were a lot of problems with this list, in my personal opinion, but then again, remember the setup. It's a survey. It wasn't me and a bunch of the crew sitting around in a room talking about who gonna have, who we not gonna have. There's some monster omissions on this bad boy. But it speaks to what people remember and what people care about, which, again, I find fascinating. Tiger Woods not on the list. I got bird brains in my mentions telling me, well, he said he's not black, so he shouldn't be on. He's Kaplan Nation, yada, yada. Come on, man. Girl brain. All right. I'm a guy that grew up watching tons of sports just like most of you out there listening. Golf was a thing when I was a kid. We're talking early 90s. Tiger comes along. Golf is a totally different thing all of a sudden. I got my aunts and uncles asking me about what's going on. People are following the game that never followed it before. Good thing for golf. Tiger Woods' career falls apart. His social life falls apart. I stopped watching golf. And I never thought that would happen. Not because I was so into golf, but I just assumed because it was part of my life before Tiger that it would be potentially afterwards. It's not, fam. Your man is not tuning in on Sundays. And I got no problem with the game. It's just something that's moved outside of my ecosystem from a sports fan standpoint. So that was a major omission. Deion Sanders, not on the list. I mean, I said on SportsCenter today with Kerry Champion Coast to Coast that I could scream for an hour about Deion. Well, guess who's got an hour today? I might just have to do it. 3 sports in college. Once played in a first game of a doubleheader. Went and ran a leg of a relay on the track. Came back, played the second leg of the doubleheader. That was just in college. He's also the only guy that's ever played in a World Series and a Super Bowl. He also played in an NFL game and a Major League Baseball game in the same day. So there's that. And don't come at me with Bo Jackson because I'll embarrass you once again. But Bo was a good player. He wasn't Deion. I'll cut a guy some slack for injuries cutting short their career. I'm not going to add to anybody's legacy for something that didn't happen. 1-888-SAY-ESPN, 1-888-729-3776. When we come back, going to take a couple of your phone calls. I want to see what you have to say about this list. Not everybody agrees with everything. And remember, it's a survey done by the public. I'm Clinton Yates, filling in for Bomani Jones here on The Right Time on ESPN Radio.
The Right Time with Bomani Jones.
Don't stop. It's The Right Time with Bomani Jones on ESPN Radio. My name is Clinton Yates, filling in on a Tuesday. ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance. And guests on The Right Time up here via the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Get in touch with me, fam, through the 1-800-Flowers.com Twitter feed, at ESPN Radio, at Clinton Yates. Talking about the top 50 list. The undefeated unveiled it, at least the last 10 today. A lot of people had some issues with it. Michael Jordan was at the top of the list. Just want to remind everyone, 10,000 plus people were surveyed via SurveyMonkey for this bad boy. It wasn't just me and the squad sitting in the back room. That's not how it came together. Adults were asked to rank 200 athletes on 20 different surveys. Respondents were asked how great of an athlete each person was or is using a scale of 1 to 10. And the 4 overall factors were overall ranking, dominance, inspiration, and impact on society. I mentioned last segment that it's not at all crazy that Michael Jordan was at the top. What world have you been living in the past 30 years? Sure, the world is bigger than the last 30 years. I get that. But things move a little faster and things are a little bigger these days. That's just how it works. 1-888-ESPN, 1-888-729-3776. Tony in North Carolina, what do you think about the list?
Well, I didn't see the entire survey, so I'm really commenting on what I just tuned in and heard you say about Michael Jordan and Muhammad Ali. But I think Michael Jordan certainly deserves to be well at the top because, you know, as a black athlete from a talent standpoint, it's unquestioned. But one of the influential items that black people tend to struggle with is economically. And Michael Jordan certainly has been a successful businessman, and he moved the needle in marketing and branding to a new level. And as a black athlete, he represents black people. And when you hit it on that large of a scale, it allows other people to look at him and say, yeah, Michael Jordan was a great athlete. He did this. But also now, yeah, other black people can be successful and smart and all that. And in terms of Muhammad Ali, he had audiences that just were, you know, just phenomenal. And the biggest point that I think you made is you don't have to be combative to be influential. And if a minority gets stuck into that rut, it's really sad. So for these people to move the needle influential and not be combative, I think is just tremendous. So I just wanted to get that point in. So that's it.
Thanks for the phone call, Tony. That was a good call. And not because he happened to agree with me. But, yeah, I mean, that's all I'm saying, man. We don't got to all be fighting and yelling and screaming. The fact that Jordan was as marketable as he was, you can get out there and say, oh, he was just a shill for corporate America and $1 billion company. Who you think got them there, Leroy? Jordan was a daggone good player who people liked to watch. The hardest thing in America is getting people to like you. He was pretty good at it. And I don't even like him myself that much. 1-888-ESPN, 1-888-729-3776. Derek in Ohio, what are your thoughts on the list?
Hey, Clinton, where was my guy from Ohio State, Jesse Owens, at on that list?
I think he was at 4 or 5.
Okay. That's respectable, I guess. That was a long time ago, so people surveyed may not know, but all right, that's respectable, I guess. That was the first person I thought of, though, when you said you were going to name off the top 10. That was the first person I thought of.
Cool. Appreciate the phone call. 1-888-ESPN, 1-888-729-3776. Shannon, can you hit us with the top 10 people on the list?
Sure, and I'll start from 10 through 1.
Yep.
Number 10, Jerry Rice. Number 9, Gabby Douglas. Number 8, Simone Biles. Number 7, Hank Aaron. Number 6, Serena Williams. Number 5, Jesse Owens. Number 4, Willie Mays. Coming at 3, Muhammad Ali. Number 2, Jackie Robinson. And number 1, Michael Jordan.
Thank you, Shannon. I almost think there's a larger discussion to be had about the fact that Robinson is 2 and not 3 over Ali. Like, if you're going to argue that Ali should definitely be, I don't know. There's an interesting discussion there between 1, 2, and 3 that I don't think necessarily is just about unseating Michael Jordan in that situation. You're listening to The Right Time with Bomani Jones. Clinton Yates filling in here on a Tuesday. Get instant gold status at Shell. Join the Fuel Rewards program now at fuelrewards.com/gold. 1-888-ESPN, 1-888-729-3776. Eric in Michigan, what do you think about the list unveiled today?
Thanks for taking my call. After hearing that top 10 list, I'm kind of a little disappointed that Serena Williams is, not saying disappointed she's up that high, but that she's higher than Arthur Ashe. And without Arthur Ashe paving the way, there are a lot of tennis players that wouldn't even be getting the time of day.
Thanks for the phone call. Althea Gibson's pretty high up there as well. That's a good call. 1-888-ESPN, 1-888-729-3776. Let's remind you, though, it's a survey. People were asked to rank these things based on their own opinions, which is always interesting to think about what folks' impact level is when it comes to various people in the public eye. I'm not saying it's a don't blame me situation. I'm saying that, to me, is as illuminating a fact as anything, is that they surveyed nearly 10,000 or more than 10,000 people about this list. 1-888-ESPN, 1-888-729-3776. Nico in Chapel Hill, what's good?
Yeah, hey, this is Nico. So listen, one other way to kind of gauge who's in the top 10 for this list, and especially with regard to fame and impact on society, if you're able to leave the United States, go to Europe. I lived in France for 2 years. I just moved back to the States. And the names Michael Jordan and Muhammad Ali are the only 2 figures on that top 10 list who I could name that were just 100% unanimously understood by everyone on the dinner table with whomever I was with at any point in time. I mean, there are not many other people that you can say that about. Thank you for taking my call.
Pas de problème, monsieur. 1-888-ESPN, 1-888-729-3776. Steven in Phoenix, what's good?
Hey, what's going on, man? I just want to say, Bill Russell not being in the top 10, that is ridiculous, man. The things that he did, he was influential, 11 rings, was a coach, too. I don't get it. Michael Johnson was in front of him, and he got busted for steroids. Thanks, man.
Thanks for the phone call. And I'm going to get to that quickly before we move on. That's an interesting point, and that's one of those things where time becomes a factor. Unfortunately for Bill Russell, the world's greatest historian, YouTube, you look up Bill Russell highlights, Shannon, 95% of them are in black and white. That's just a factor of time. Bill Russell should probably be much higher on simple player-coach championship alone. The concept of the player-coach winning anything is just so insane to me on so many levels. But, yeah, there's some things you have to allow for here. And I'm not saying that I'm defending every single place, but I can understand where certain people have pitfalls versus others. It's not an easy thing to get through. I'm Clinton Yates, filling in for Bomani Jones. It's the right time. We might talk about this a little more coming up. It's Tuesday on ESPN Radio. Like I've been telling you for a while, if you travel for business, stop wasting time pricing your flights and hotels at the same old sites you used to go to. The only site you need is Upside.com. It's quick and easy for Upside to show you the exact flights you're looking for and the big-name hotels you want to stay at. You could buy them separately or bundle them together, whatever. The more you bundle, the more you save, the bigger the gift card you receive to places like Amazon.com every time you buy a business travel package using Upside. Their concierge level of service is second to none, fam. You get the VIP treatment while still paying low prices. And their expert navigators are always available 24/7 through phone, chat, social, and email to help you at any time. Upside's the real deal for buying your business trips. You got to give them a try, and right now, when you use promo code Bomani, you're guaranteed to get at least a $100 Amazon.com gift card on your package purchase. That's code Bomani to get a $100 gift card free Upside.com, the better way to buy business travel. Minimum purchase required. See site for complete details.
The Right Time with Bomani Jones.
To the Right Time with Bomani Jones on ESPN Radio. My name is Clinton Yates, filling in on a Tuesday. ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance, and all guests on the Right Time appear via the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Hit me up on Twitter through the 1-800-Flowers.com Twitter feed. At Clinton Yates, at ESPN Radio. Let me read a couple right here. Shocker. Got a lot of people asking for what you can expect. At Clinton Yates, what do I think? I want to see a list of the top 100 white athletes and see who still has a job. At Clinton Yates, best white athletes discussion next? No. The Undefeated presented its list of the top 50 black athletes, and the top 10 were unveiled today. 10,350 adults were surveyed with SurveyMonkey, and everything was rated on dominance, inspiration, and impact on society. We've been talking a lot about some of the omissions, some of the rankings, where people are, where people aren't. But again, we didn't come up with this list in some room. People were asked. So understand that when you're discussing where things rank and where things fall, because it is an interesting discussion all over the shop. 1-888-ESPN, 1-888-729-3776. Ryan in Texas, what do you think about the list?
I just don't understand how Tiger doesn't even make the top 10, top 5. I mean, he did so much for golf and made golf fun to watch. And then where's Barry Bonds and Emmett, too?
And who? Who was the last one? Sorry.
Emmett.
Okay. Thanks for the phone call, Ryan. Shannon, I'm going to you on all the checkdowns for where people are on the list.
Okay.
But I think he's right about Tiger. Maybe it's because people feel, if you're asked about this, people don't want to reward something because they feel he doesn't deserve it after how his marital life fell apart. But I don't think anybody who's a responsible sports fan can say to themselves that Tiger Woods wasn't one of the most 50 most impactful black athletes of their lifetime. You just can't. That's not a reasonable assessment of anything. Now, if you're of the opinion that, golf as an entirety is just sort of a non-thing, I mean, okay, but I'm not buying that. Huge hole in a lot of people's swings, to mix metaphors here. But if Tiger Woods not being on that list, I can understand why people think that makes the whole thing a little null and void. But I don't think that. Who did that caller ask about? I forgot already.
He asked about Barry Bonds, and he asked about Emmitt Smith. And I'm looking at the list here, and I'm not seeing Barry Bonds. Unless my eyes are playing tricks on me, I'm not seeing Barry Bonds.
Certainly not seeing Emmitt Smith.
Emmitt Smith is at 19.
Really?
Yeah.
Hold up. What?
Yeah, he's at 19. Yeah.
Herschel Walker's on the list too, right?
Let's see.
That means that Texas had a large amount of representation in this survey.
Yeah, Earl Campbell's at 48.
I mean, come on.
George Foreman's at 35.
We're just going to start naming random dudes that play running back in Texas? I mean, not to say that Emmitt Smith wasn't a great player. Don't get me wrong. But, I mean, come on. Top 50 black athletes? I don't know about Emmitt Smith.
Emmitt Smith was the second running back on the list. Walter Payton came in at 12. Smith at 19. Bo Jackson at 25. Let's see. Herschel Walker, 34.
Yeah, Herschel Walker ain't got no business being there.
Oh, yeah. Jim Brown at 30.
Jim Brown is a little low for some people's taste. We can get into that later. But Emmitt Smith, you know what? My favorite thing about Emmitt Smith before we move on from this is that he used to take his helmet off when he scored touchdowns and just show his face. That was the coolest thing in the world. 1-888-ESPN, 1-888-729-3776. Natalie in California, how do you feel about the list?
Hi, how are you?
I'm well.
Okay, so I'm curious as to, since Serena made the top 10, where did Venus fall into there? And surprisingly, I don't know why we didn't hear FloJo in the top 10.
Thanks for the phone call. I believe FloJo is around the 19.
She is at 33.
Who am I thinking of?
Jackie Joyner Kersey's
around
27.
19? She's at 27. Okay. And Venus is
15. Venus is at 15. Serena at 6.
Okay. Appreciate that update. You're listening to The Right Time with Bomani Jones. Clinton Yates filling in here. ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance. You could save hundreds on your car, business, or recreational vehicle insurance from a local independent agent. Go to Progressive.com today. Now that's Progressive. I just want to address something right quick that jumped up in my mentions. A lot of people saying, listen to you, young buck. Jim Brown's way too low on that list. Perhaps that's true, but let me explain how I feel about that. Number one, and understand where I'm coming from here. This is not about a rangs discussion. This is about a publicity discussion. Jim Brown never played in a Super Bowl. And, it's not about whether or not they won the NFL championship. I understand that, Browns fans. Cleveland, relax. But it's about what the NFL was at that time versus what it has become now. If you never played in a Super Bowl, you were not showcased in the same way in the same league. So there's a popularity factor there. Number two, he had a relatively short career. Number three, not a lot of people like Jim Brown. And the fourth thing is the lacrosse factor. Now, a lot of people like to throw around, oh, did you know Jim Brown was a beast at lacrosse? Yeah, I knew that. I was familiar. I'm from the Mid-Atlantic. I've got a pretty decent lacrosse background. A lot of guys I knew played lacrosse. Yeah, well, he was dominant. So, two sports, whatever. And it's yeah, absolutely. Jim Brown's one of the most dominant lacrosse players of all time. They also had to change the rules of lacrosse because of the way that Jim Brown played. And, a lot of people, I'm not going to say that discounts anything from Jim Brown. I just want people to understand that the game he played was a different game than what you see now. They had to basically invent cradling. Because Jim Brown was just going to hold the ball and beast everybody out on the field and then rip shots. They had to switch things up. So understand what you're talking about when you talk about where Jim Brown's influence to lacrosse was. They made a rule, and he basically completely revolutionized the game. It's not a knock. Just a little insight for you on what that's all about. 1-888-SAY-ESPN, 1-888-729-3776. Brian in Georgia, how you doing?
Hey, how's it going? Appreciate the call.
No doubt.
Well, first of all, I want to say the first three that you have on your list could very well be rearranged in the top three all day long. As far as influential, that's what we're looking at. Michael Jordan by far is my guy. Love him to death. But, there are some great other athletes out there. I didn't hear the whole list, but I was wondering where Carl Lewis, Doug Williams, Shaquille O'Neal, where they may have fallen in this list.
Thanks for the phone call. I don't believe Doug is on the list. And I feel like I want to say Shaquille is lower than I think he should be.
Shaq is at 16.
Who's directly above and below him?
Venus is at 15, and Julius Erving is at 17.
You know what? Then that might be about right. Fair enough. Doug Williams is not on the list, right?
I don't see him, no.
The reason Doug
Carl
Williams
Lewis, I'm sorry for cutting you up.
No, go ahead.
Carl Lewis is at 32. That was the other one he asked about.
Okay. Doug Williams would obviously be on the list, being the first black quarterback to win a Super Bowl. I'm not sure that was enough to get you on here in this case. But it's an interesting list, all right? Talk amongst your friends. Discuss amongst your people. You could take it to the barbershop. You could take it to the salon. You could take it to church. You could take it to school. Just don't take it to my mentions because I'm going to make you feel stupid. I'm just kidding. Thanks, everybody, for engaging. And, look, I think overall it was a fun exercise because it got a lot of people talking about it. I want to give a big shout-out to Jerry Bembry, Justin Tinsley, and Aaron Dotson, who did most of the profiles of the list. Talked to them on my my weekend show, The Morning Roast, last week, about what that experience was like. And they all had some pretty good things to say about what it was like to go back and look at some of these lives and these careers in different ways than they had in a long time. So shout out to the Undefeated. Shout out to Survey Monkey for getting something done that I thought, at the very least, made you think about what we've been doing these past, 75 years. Coming up, going to have to talk about the Ocho. Bold move, Cotton. ESPNU made a switch for a day. We'll see how it goes. I'm Clinton Yates, filling in for Bomani Jones on The Right Time on ESPN Radio.
The Right Time with Bomani Jones.
Welcome back to The Right Time with Bomani Jones. My name is Clinton Yates, filling in on a Tuesday. ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance, and all guests on The Right Time appear via the Shell Penzo Performance Line. Get in touch with me through the 1-800-Flowers.com Twitter feed, at Clinton Yates, at ESPN Radio. Had a little stunt casting today around the network. Got to admit, I enjoyed this a little bit. When I first heard that ESPN was bringing the Ocho back, I thought about a couple things. Number one, how much life dodgeball has gotten, just in general, out of pop culture references that I don't know that everybody would have predicted when that movie came out. It was a funny premise. And sure, it did well in the box office, I think. But I also feel like it was one of those ones where, You didn't walk out of that movie saying all the lines, but it got late love, and you realized that there were a lot more funny moments in that movie than you might have remembered. I feel like it got a late sort of cable run, maybe not cable, but it had a long tail for its influence from a social standpoint. Long story short, the idea behind the Ocho, if you've never seen the movie Dodgeball, is that the Dodgeball Championships are aired on a fictional network called ESPN 8, the Ocho. Now, I'm fairly certain that if you counted out all the ESPN networks, you could name any one of them the Ocho if you just so chose to. But in this case, they did it with ESPNU, and they decided to start airing a bunch of like wild events: disc golf, roller derby, trampoline dodgeball, the Firefighters World Challenge, the Kabaddi World Cup Final, which if you don't know what Kabaddi is, it's basically Combat Red Rover. It's dope. The Bags Championship, a.k.a. Cornhole, the Moxie Games, which I've never even heard of, and video games, Shannon.
Now, this one has a special place in my heart because they were airing the Street Fighter, I think Street Fighter 5 championships, and I was a Street Fighter kid, so much so where I used to go to the local corner store, and I would be there for hours just watching dudes play Street Fighter. So when I saw this was on TV today, I was locked in. Like, I'm sitting here in studio, supposed to be doing show prep, and I'm glued to the television wondering why some dude is out here using Zangief and another dude's using Charlie. Totally confused.
Zangief's a grapple character, we may find out. I only know that because I was watching one time the other night in the hotel room bored, and I was like, you know what, let me flip this bad boy on. I wasn't that good of a Street Fighter player, though. I played at an arcade in San Diego a couple weeks ago. Shouts to my buddy Slim. I was out there, and we played. But that was about it. I was not a huge Street Fighter guy. What was your go-to game, Shannon?
Probably one of the Marios. I would say either the first Mario, maybe Mario 3, or the aforementioned Street Fighter 2. I was a big Street Fighter fan.
For me, like if I had to go to the wall and play on TV, it'd probably be one of the early 90s NHL games, maybe GoldenEye. I know I wasn't the best player even at my school in GoldenEye, so I'm not even trying to act like I'm some beast, but I would just like to do it on N64 or FIFA 99.
But that's like one of the beauties of video games within itself, because amongst your little circle of friends and family, you may have been the best player, and you think you're unstoppable until you expanded your universe and played somebody either from another neighborhood or another city, or you went off to college and played somebody. It was like finding out that aliens existed. Like, we are not alone in this universe. There's actually somebody that's better in this game than I am.
This is basically why I stopped playing video games on any competitive level once I went to college. Because it was almost like, you know what, it's okay if it's not fun with people that you know you're going to see every day, or people that you've already established your relationships with. It's not fun when you're at somebody's house in college and folks are drinking and you might get into a fist fight. You might have to throw them hands up over what's going on the Mario Kart stage. Things can get testy if you talk too much trash. And so for me, that's when video games became you know what, fam, go ahead, be you. I'm just going to try to compete and win. I ain't out here trying to defend my honor over these sticks. Shannon, I don't know about you, but I have phased out video games to something that is just now competitive fun with me, myself, and my friends, not necessarily something I'm going to the wall for.
Right. That's where I am. I'll play every once in a while with my son, just on the very basic level. Like, playing 2K, I know how to shoot, pass, steal, the very basics. Learning how to lean with the shot and setting up the off. I don't have time. I don't have the mental energy to learn how to do all of this stuff. So, yeah, it's at a very novice level for me. That's what I can give right now.
All right. I play FIFA on Xbox. Dominique Foxworth gave me an Xbox. That's why I have one. Shouts to Fox. But, yeah, that's all I play. I have one game. I play one game with my friends. They come over. That's what they do. Kabaddi, though, I'm telling y'all, if you don't know what Kabaddi is, check it out. You remember the old playground game, Red Rover? Red Rover, send your homeboy over. And you try to get back. You try to tag and get back, all that. They found a way to make this like a combat sport in India, and it's awesome. Coming up, was Kyrie Irving's trade request really courageous? We're going to talk about that next and flip over to the to the NBA. You're listening to The Right Time with Bomani Jones on ESPN Radio. I'm Clinton Yates. Today is Tuesday. So you know what you should do? Turn up, just like McConan said.
Thanks for listening to the Right Time Podcast. Please come back tomorrow for more. And don't forget to listen to The Right Time with Bomani Jones from 4 p.m. to 7 Eastern on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app.
Okay, keep your eyes closed.
Okay.
I want to show you my first ever painting.
All right.
Okay. Open your eyes.
Oh, that's a lot of colors and shapes.
So be honest. What do you think?
Well, I like how if you switch to Geico, you could save hundreds of dollars on car insurance.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Yeah. Here, why don't I hold your paintbrush while you call them?
Geico, because saving 15% or more on car insurance is always a great answer.
Welcome to The Right Time Podcast. The Right Time with Bomani Jones.
Tell your mom hi. You're listening to The Right Time with Bomani Jones. My name is Clinton Yates, filling in here on a Tuesday. ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance, and all guests on The Right Time appear via the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Get in touch with me through the 1-800-Flowers.com Twitter feed, at Clinton Yates, at ESPN Radio. Right now it's time for Straight Talk, brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless. Best phones, best networks, no contracts. Flipping things over to the NBA. Former Cleveland Cavaliers GM David Griffin said on Monday that if Kyrie Irving asked for a trade the way he did it courageously. He was on The Jump on ESPN, and he basically said, most dudes aren't really going to go about it that way. Guys leak stuff to the media. Guys got all sorts of rumors going on Instagram and so forth. Let's hear his words exactly from The Jump.
Well, I think Kyrie's going to end up getting traded. But I think what Ron was saying is really unfair to Kyrie. I don't think this is youth and ignorance. This is a guy who handled this situation exactly like he was supposed to. He went to Dan Gilbert privately, told him that he thought he would be happier somewhere else. The absolute worst thing this guy could have done was pretend to be all in and sink the ship from within. Most guys don't have the courage to do what he did. So that's not youth and ignorance. That's a little bit more courage than people give him credit for.
Props to David Griffin on that. This was not a narrative we'd heard a lot about. Most people coming out and saying, and I was one of them, what's Kyrie's problem? What's he complaining about? You don't want to play with LeBron? A couple days later, people started to understand, yeah, you know what? General James might not be the guy you want to go into battle with anymore. That became a little bit more understandable. Kyrie's, 25 years old? A little tired of getting sunned by old man LeBron, and not just old man LeBron, but old man LeBron and his squad. Sort of reminds me of a situation like when I grew up. My best friend lived down the street. We happened to go to the same school across town, so basically he was the one person I hung out with no matter what at all times in the neighborhood. He also had 3 older brothers who were constantly clowning me. It was all love, but after a while I was like, man, tired of going over your house sometimes. I ain't trying to hear from your brothers every time I'm over there. That'll change when we all grew up a little, and I got a smart mouth on me. I started telling people why they were foolish. But my point is this. Kyrie doesn't have to like LeBron. And the fact that he went out of his way to even go about this through the proper channels, I think Griffin has a point. Courageous is not quite the word I would use. I would just say intelligent and respectful. I mean, walking into a guy's office and saying, hey, I want out. I mean, sure. It's not like he loses anything by doing that. So courage is not quite the word I would go with. But I see his point. It's not every day now that an athlete presents a piece of information to the people that it's most important to without making a scene about it. I mean, not to say anything wrong about Vince Wilfork, but I mean, look at that situation. He retired with a commercial. Awesome commercial. I'm just saying, thinking about that versus Kyrie walking into an office and just simply saying directly to Dan Gilbert, I'd like to go. I've gained a little bit of respect for Kyrie Irving in this situation. That's not to say I had none. That's just to say that my mind has changed drastically since this news first came out. And in many ways, I'm kind of rooting for Kyrie in the next stage. Because it was real easy to look at him as selfish and whiny. sort of maybe overly concerned about the wrong things. For a while, I even wondered how much he liked playing basketball, because it didn't seem like he was really that into the processes if his idea of fun was leaving LeBron. But as this all comes together, you start to see how this makes sense. If LeBron's out anyway, what am I hanging around for? Ain't nothing here for me. He already got the ring. It's not like he's got anything to prove in Cleveland. He was on that team. He played in those finals. He sold those sneakers. He sold those jerseys. Kyrie moving on from Cleveland is just another guy in the NBA going to another team on the whole. It's not like LeBron leaving the first time. It's not even like some of these guys who sort of stay at teams for a while, gain a connectivity, and then sort of jump to try to chase the ring. It's not that at all. Kyrie is a young man. He's got plenty of years ahead of him. I'd go so far as to say that the next team he plays for, presuming they win a ring, might be the team you end up remembering Kyrie for more so than even the Cavs. Don't rule out that possibility. Very much possible. You're listening to The Right Time with Bomani Jones. I'm Clinton Yates, filling in on ESPN Radio. I just wonder where he's going to go. And I wonder if, because of the way this went down, the Cavs are going to grant him his wish and how the fans are going to feel about that. Like, if you're Cleveland, are you mad at Kyrie? Are you thinking, man, you could have just hung around one more season to figure this out with Bron? Maybe if y'all had won one more, everybody could have convinced everybody else to stay. There's a little bit of a problem with that, though. And the problem is that it's still Cleveland. Like, that's not a super knock on Cleveland. I got many peeps in C-Town. But ultimately, if you're somebody that's trying to be a superstar, and I don't mean like, oh, yeah, I can make a lot of money, and oh, yeah, I can just sort of be in a fair amount of commercials, I think Cleveland might be a little bit more limiting than people think. Not on some small market, you can't make cash. Everybody can make cash in the NBA now. That's not my point. My point is that there are higher profile teams in the league, whether or not LeBron James is on that or not. Cleveland ain't one of those teams. Kyrie Irving is going to go somewhere, and he might have a little something to prove. I'm very, very intrigued as a result of knowing that he wanted out in a way that wasn't just presumably a knee-jerk reaction. I'm very interested to see how this next phase goes. 1-888-SAY-ESPN, 1-888-729-3776. I wonder what Cleveland fans think, though. Hit me up. Do you root for Kyrie on the way out? Are you happy that he was at least straightforward about it? Are you sort of mad that LeBron has intimated that he may be gone, and as a result, you can't keep your team together? Now, look, I've said many times before, nobody's going to be mad at LeBron in the long term. He got y'all the ring. Fans of the Cavs are never going to have a hard part in their heart anymore once that ring came.
The Cavaliers face quite the conundrum right now when it comes to Kyrie, because I don't know if you saw this with Nike getting the licensing deal for NBA jerseys. The Cavaliers will have new jerseys this season. So if you're a Cavs fan, do you avoid buying a Kyrie jersey knowing that there's a chance that he could be traded?
Jersey chalk talk. Good question. I don't wear jerseys anymore, so I'm not as in on the jersey buying mindset as the common fan. So we'll have to go to the phones on that. 1-888-ESPN, 1-888-729-3776. Let me complete that thought on LeBron, though, which is what I'm saying is that how long, rather, are you allowed to be upset at LeBron for this? For saying, yo, man, I mean, I get it, these 2-year deals, et cetera, you have that right, so on and so forth, but, like, it's hard for us to build. It's not like full-blown anger. It's more like, it's not getting into a car accident with your parents' car. It's more like blocking them in when they need to go to the grocery store and you ain't home. 1-888-ESPN, 1-888-729-3776. Curtis in Ohio, what do you think about the Kyrie situation?
Hey, thanks for taking the call. I fully support Kyrie, and I'm a Cavs fan, but you don't like it. He did it in a classy way. He didn't make a huge scene in the media, and, I mean, there's been a few cryptic tweets or whatever. Bron does the same thing, so it's no big deal. And Cavs fans need to quit being dumb and burning his jersey, because the last time we did that, you know what karma is. We burnt LeBron's jersey, and then we started winning about 9 games a year. So just wish the dude luck. Hope he, doesn't win a championship against us, but, just move on.
Thanks for the phone call. All right. I'm willing to accept that. The guy hit one of the biggest shots in the history of the franchise. It's hard to be mad at that. I can understand a little frustration with LeBron, though. You're supposed to be keeping all this together. Not really happening. It's not to blame him by any stretch of the imagination. It's just that, obviously, it is critical to what's going on with the rest of the team. 1-888-ESPN, 1-888-729-3776. Richard in Los Angeles, what do you think about this Kyrie LeBron scenario?
Hey, I just wanted to say, I love the show, but I just want to say that I feel like Kyrie is being like a petulant child, to be honest with you. It's an ego thing. I mean, I want it to be my team. What is that? LeBron James is one of the greatest players of all time, and it takes nothing away from the greatness of Kyrie. And much like Kobe and Shaq, later on in his career, he's going to go back and he's going to say, you know what? Why did I do that? We could have had X amount of titles no matter what happened. Now we won't. That's it.
Thanks for the phone call.
God.
Richard calling from the back of a flatbed truck. NWA and Fab Five Freddy styles on your MTV Raps back in the 90s, Shannon. A lot of noise on that call. 1-888-ESPN. 1-888-729-3776. One last one. Tony in Arizona. What do you think about Kyrie?
Hey, man. I think that the Cavaliers really need to look at trading Kyrie. Otherwise, it's probably going to look like a Paul George situation where teams are going to know he wants to get out of there, and he may not get a whole lot of value. So I know the Cavs fans probably want one last run, but try to trade him away, get some prospects, build the team up.
Thanks for the phone call. They're not exactly in a tough spot, but they're in a spot where they certainly have to make a decision. And I think if you're a Cavs fan and you're the Cavs organization, that's all you can really ask from a player who actually has a demand. Sure, it might seem a little selfish, but then again, what are we all doing here? He's got a right to want what he wants. If he doesn't want to play there anymore, he doesn't want to play there anymore. Making a guy play against his will? Sure, not the worst thing in the world to get paid millions of dollars to play basketball. But it might affect your team down the line, and that's the decision that Dan Gilbert's going to have to make. Straight Talk Wireless, nationwide coverage on America's largest and most dependable 4G LTE networks. Coming up, UCLA's quarterback Josh Rosen says that, if you want to see Alabama compete or not compete, let's see their SAT scores. I'm Clinton Yates, filling in for Bomani Jones on The Right Time on ESPN Radio.
The Right Time with Bomani Jones.
To The Right Time with Bomani Jones. My name is Clinton Yates, filling in here on a Tuesday. ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance, and all guests on The Right Time appear via the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Get in touch with me through the 1-800-Flowers.com Twitter feed, at ESPN Radio, at Clinton Yates. I always reserve the right to embarrass you in front of your friends on said Twitter box, and I do it often. So watch yourself before you step into my zone. UCLA quarterback Josh Rosen has had a couple things to say about the schedules of college football players. Headline: football and college don't go together. Now, what I know about this comes largely from the experience of working with my co-host, Dominique Foxworth, on the Morning Roast, Sundays, 9 a.m. to noon, by the by, who played at Maryland, played in the pros for a long time. And what he would always say is that people don't seem to understand that the chances you get as far as matriculation are concerned are just not the same as every similar college student. Now, what Josh Rosen said here was, okay, raise the SAT requirement in Alabama and see what kind of team they have. That's perceived as a shot at Alabama and at the SEC, and it is. Don't get it twisted. But I think his point was some schools force you to do a lot more on the actual school front than others. Now back to Dominique. What he would say is, look, Sure, he could have chosen to be a chemistry major or whatever, but that meant that he was just going to be a bad football player. And if you wanted to make the league, you had to make the choices that required you to be a better football player. So for all these people who were like, oh, well, if you don't make the league, you can just fall back on your college degree or whatever, it's not like that. The opportunity cost is not the same. Because if you can only take certain classes in order to make your practice schedule, well, you've automatically lopped off half the majors you're even eligible for. And if you don't pick according to what is going to make you the best football player, well, you are then going to be ostracized by your coaches and perhaps your teammates, which then puts your scholarship at risk to get said education. This is how that math works. So when you're out here criticizing people who think that players should be paid, have a complete understanding of what is actually going on. It's not just a matter of coddled athletes not appreciating what they have. It's nowhere near that basic. Rosen said, trying to do both is like trying to do 2 full-time jobs. There are guys who have no business being school, but they're here because this is the path to the NFL. There's no other way. Then there's the other side that says that raise the SAT eligibility requirements. Okay, raise the SAT requirement in Alabama and see what kind of team they have. You lose athletes, and then the product on the field suffers. He's right. It's a genuine conundrum if you are psychologically locked in to this notion of amateurism, which, by the way, is bunk. I'd like to believe that everybody understands that at this point in time, even if we are discussing the nuances right now. But it's not just a matter of picking to do anything you want. It's just not. As somebody that observed this on the most casual level, going to college, covering college sports, at a school small enough where you understood the basic lives of these guys and these women. It's not just about football players being in meetings and practices all day. You play volleyball, you play softball, you play tennis. You're doing all sorts of stuff. Sure, you might not have the largest load and you might not be under the same scrutiny, but time management in college is half the battle. Forget about the fact if you got a jersey on. And ultimately, that's why paying the players makes sense. It's a matter of respecting their time. Sure, putting your body on the line is obviously a concern. And if you want to get into that aspect of it in terms of respecting people's bodies and what they're worth, that's certainly a component of it as well. But for me, it's as large a part of time as it is anything else. You're cutting off their opportunities to do other things. And as they say in this country, time is money. And that's what fascinates me. It's brought to you by Firestone, complete auto care, keeping cars running newer, longer. Whatever you drive a Firestone. Coming up, going to talk to the coach, Herm Edwards. Great guy, smart guy, and my mom likes him a lot too. I'm Clinton Yates, filling in for Bomani Jones on The Right Time on ESPN Radio.
The Right Time with Bomani Jones.
Abomatomically, it's The Right Time with Bomani Jones on ESPN Radio. I'm Clinton Yates, filling in here on a Tuesday. ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance, and all guests on The Right Time appear via the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Get in touch with me through the 1-800-Flowers.com Twitter feed, at ESPN Radio, at Clinton Yates. A lot of jokers in there today, but it's better than it was the day before, which is all I can really ask for. Right now, joining us on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line, it's the coach, Herm Edwards. Coach, I got to ask you first off, with this Jay Cutler situation, if you're Gase and you just say, hey, I got to get my guy, how much credence? I mean, like, have you ever been in a situation where you say, you know what, the stability is more important than the talent or the situation? I just got to get a guy in here who at this stage of the game knows what I'm talking about so I can move on to other things.
Well, that's one of the reasons. And I think the second reason is when you look at the guys that are available, he's probably the most talented, regardless of how you feel about the guy. And Gase knows him better than anybody. He actually coached him. You know, I was in a similar situation a couple of years with the Jets. We lose both quarterbacks in the first quarter, Chad Pennington and we lose our second-string quarterback as well. And I think at halftime, went in the locker room and called Vinny Testaverde. He's 42 years old, sitting on the couch, and said, "Vinny, can you come back?" He said, "Yeah, Coach, I've been watching the game. You need some help, don't you?" I said, "Yeah." This is during the season now. I mean, this is during the season. Real live games are being played, and he comes back on, Sundays and shows up Monday. Doesn't start against the Ravens the following week, but the next week he actually started and won a game for us. So I think if you're Miami, don't get caught up in Cutler's, the way he talks. He's not going to wow you with his presence of speaking. He's not going to be a guy that gets you excited. That's just not who he is. But what he does bring, he brings knowledge of the offense. He has talent. He has great pocket awareness. His problem in his career has been very simple. He turns the ball over a lot, and Coach Gates knows that. But I think if you're Jay Cutler, you're excited about the guys you're playing with and the team you're playing on.
How much better do you think he makes this team?
Well, he's better than any quarterback you have there on your roster right now. There's no doubt about that. And I don't think he can carry your team. He's good enough, though, where in moments when you got to make throws, he can make those throws. There's no doubt about it. I mean, he can do that. He's always had talent as far as when it comes to arm and all those things. He's nifty enough to move in the pocket. He has great pocket presence. He's just not going to wow you. He's not going to wow you as a leader. He didn't have to lead in Chicago. He had Brian Urlacher there. He was just a quarterback. I mean, that's what he wants to do. He's going to play quarterback. I tell you this too. You start covering this guy, the one thing he is, he's honest. He's going to tell you how he feels. And, sometimes you look at him and say, why did he say that? Because that's the truth. That's how the guy feels. I've always told people this. If you watch Jay Cutler on the sideline, you're probably going to be disappointed in the fact that you're going, why does he always look like he's sucking lemons? Like, it's just his facial expressions. You're like, really? What is he doing over there, right? But that's just who he is.
We're talking with Herm Edwards here on The Right Time with Bomani Jones. I'm Clinton Yates, filling in on a Tuesday. ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance, comparing rates to help you save. Now that's Progressive. Call or click today to find out how much Progressive could save you. The situation in Denver is an interesting one. They're rotating quarterbacks in the preseason. Does that really help anyone? How do you determine talent from a snap standpoint with that kind of a setup?
Well, very difficult. And here's the problem. When you're the head coach, that means that job is wide open. And that's not a good feeling, to be quite honest, going into the preseason not knowing who your quarterback is. And you're basically telling these guys, well, somebody win the position. You actually walk in that room every 2 days and say, somebody just win the position. Don't make me have to make a decision. Well, somebody just stand up and go win this job. Remember, these guys have been competing since OTAs and mini camps. Now they're going to get to play, but still, you want somebody to win the job.
Even in preseason, though, I guess what I wonder is everybody looks at preseason and sort of says, well, hey, nothing really counts here anyway. How do you outside of obviously looking like, the next best thing, how do you win a job if it's still so close at this stage of the game?
Here's the deal when you're the coach. Score doesn't matter, but performance does, especially from your good players. This is where you prepare yourself for the season, and especially at the quarterback position. You're going to ask these guys to do some things. Obviously, you are going to let them throw the football. You're going to let them make decisions. Now, you can't always dictate what's going to happen in a preseason game because of the flow of the game. It's a little bit different than a regular season game. But you're going to actually let them throw the ball maybe a little bit more than you would in the regular season just to see how they handle themselves so you can make a decision.
Right. Herm Edwards joins us here on The Right Time with Bomani Jones. Deshaun Watson is apparently the man down there in Texans camp. Mm-hmm. Did you have any concerns about, starting a rookie week 1 going into this season?
Dallas did it.
That's a good point.
Philadelphia Eagles did it. Right? I mean, 2 teams in the division did it. Now, Dallas obviously, had a greater advantage than Philadelphia in the fact that they got an outstanding offensive line and got a really good running back, and that offense is pretty much set now. And this was a balanced offense. They actually ran the ball more than they threw it. You didn't ask him to do a whole lot. Philadelphia Wentz threw the ball over 600 times, and it showed up there in the middle of the season. He hit a slump. defense kind of bailed on him a little bit, didn't play well, and he was forced to throw a lot of passes. But I just think this, if you're Houston and you're looking at your situation, and maybe Watson doesn't start early, but I think if you're on that team, just like coaches, I've always told players this: when you go to work every day, and that means when you put your cleats on, you go on the grass and you're working, and in the classroom you watch guys, you listen to your eyes, and your eyes don't lie. And it doesn't matter if the guy's a 10-year player, a first-year player, first-round draft choice, third-round draft choice. You watch how they prepare, you watch how they practice, and you listen to your eyes, and you come up with the right answer when you do that.
Going back to your Jets, Todd Bowles is in a tough situation.
Yeah.
How do you think he deals with just not knowing he just doesn't have the talent?
Well, you're going to have to play defense. And look, they gutted the team. They made their run 2 years ago when they got Fitz. You know, they drafted all these defensive players, felt like, hey, you know what, we got a defense that can compete. We got to get a quarterback now and surround him with some guys. And went and got Marshall, went and got some offensive players. It didn't work. So now what did they do? They cut the cord. $50 million later, they let everybody go. We're going to go with young guys. They still have a nice defensive front. They drafted 2 young safeties. They're going to have to play defense. They know it. They're not going to score a lot of points. They can keep games close. But that's where you find yourself. And all Todd can do is coach the team, and he's going to have to live with his defensive special team.
Last thing I'll ask you, Coach. Brandon Albert said he was going to retire now. He's trying to come back to the Jags. If you're the coach, I mean, what do you say to this guy? What is the meeting like when you figure out that this dude a week ago said he wanted to retire, and now he's coming back into the facility trying to say, hey, what's going on?
It's funny about Brandon because I drafted Brandon.
Okay.
In Kansas City, and he was a guard coming out of Virginia. We put him at tackle week 1, and he's been starting tackle ever since. He bet on himself. He was gambling that, you know what, they're going to need to pay me. Well, they drafted Cam Robinson, and they sat there and waited and said, you know what, okay, you don't want to come back, so now he's coming back because he knows if he doesn't come back, first of all, he's got to pay that $3 million back. He doesn't want to do that. I know Brandon doesn't want to pay that money back. And so if you're the Jaguars and Tom Coughlin, he belongs to you, and you can do what you want with him. Is he worthy of something? Yeah. I mean, there's some tackles that have went down. And they're, the Giants are concerned with their tackle. I mean, Houston, they're concerned with one of their tackle spots. So he belongs to you. If I'm them, I'm just holding on to him, and just as his preseason continues to develop, he might be worth something.
He's the coach, Herm Edwards. He knows a lot more about football than I do, and I told him this when they had him on Mike and Mike. My mom's a big fan of his as well. Thank you, Herm.
Thank you, my brother. Talk to you later, man.
No doubt. Yeah, I mean, I think what he had to say, Shannon, about the Cutler situation was interesting, which is that this is kind of not quite a stopgap, but basically, yeah, he just asked him a favor. I mean, that story about calling Vinny at halftime, though. Are you serious?
He's in, right?
I mean, hold on. I don't know how the run of show goes at halftime for NFL locker rooms. I imagine the coach has some time to himself, but maybe not by himself entirely. Maybe he gets 5 minutes or so if you think about what he says to the team, what he says to his coaches in the position situations, then maybe gets a couple minutes to just sit and breathe and drink a water or whatever he's going to do. And he's going to use that time to call Vinny Testaverde, who's sitting on the couch. Talk. I'm laughing out loud thinking about that scenario unfolding in an NFL locker room and Vinny having the presence of mind to say, yeah, I'm watching the game. You guys can use me. That is an all-timer. I mean, I'm sure people knew that story. I didn't know that story. Made me laugh. Coming up, the Jags hold all the cards in that standoff we just talked with Coach with Brandon Albert. We're going to discuss that decision-making process next. I'm Clinton Yates, filling in for Bomani Jones on The Right Time on ESPN Radio.
The Right Time with Bomani Jones.
Welcome back to The Right Time with Bomani Jones. I'm Clinton Yates, filling in on a Tuesday, clapping my hands to this beat. Shout out to Easy Mo B, who I think is the one who produced it. ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance, and all guests on The Right Time up here via the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Get in touch with us through the 100 Flowers Twitter feed, at Clinton Yates, at ESPN Radio. So the Colin Kaepernick situation has taken another turn. This morning, film director Spike Lee promoted a rally that is going to be held for Colin Kaepernick in front of the NFL's headquarters in New York on Park Place on August 23rd. He says he didn't organize it. He says he didn't create it. He's just promoting it. It's a little awkward because, they misspelled his name in the tweet, but we're going to look past that. We're going to laugh at it, but we're going to look past it. Kind of kills the entire vibe right off top, but that's a different discussion. My thing is this. If nothing else, this indicates that not only is it bigger than football with NFL teams, well, it's now become bigger than football for the people who care about it. And I mean that in this sense. Look, it's one thing for every single talking head on the radio and on television to be having discussions about a random internal personnel matter in the NFL. Even with the NFL as America's most popular league from a television and, money-making standpoint. It's quite another to have Hollywood luminaries lending their voices to causes related to said league. That's a big jump. Now, Spike Lee is not the biggest jump because he's obviously such a sports fan. We see him on the sidelines at the Garden all the time. But don't think that his influence doesn't bring a completely different circle into this. There's online petitions. Numbers are pretty high for people who say they're going to boycott the NFL if Kaepernick doesn't get on a roster. People talking about, I'm not going to go to games. I'm going to start canceling television subscriptions. Some people I know and respect are doing this themselves. But if you ask me, I don't get that. I don't understand the connectivity to the issue if you're boycotting the league because Colin Kaepernick's not on a roster. Now, if what you're trying to say is, well, obviously they colluded. Obviously there was a whisper campaign. Clearly he's being blackballed. I'm not going to support this league. Okay. But ultimately that comes back as pub for the league. If you are saying every week, I'm not going to watch this league, and we are presumably operating with a finite amount of space and bandwidth for each one of us, to me, that's time that could be spent talking about what Colin Kaepernick was actually talking about when he decided to sit and kneel for the national anthem. Not knocking any of this other stuff. It just seems that specifically boycotting the league and being so vociferous about it further adds to the issue of the fact that we can't actually discuss the matter at hand. That's me personally. But the other thing here that's interesting is the date and the timing of this. The 23rd is week 3. It's the day before week 3 of the preseason. Last year, when Kaepernick first did this, was week 3 of the preseason. People seem to forget that he actually just sat on the bench during the national anthem the first time, and he talked to Steve Weish about it. And Steve Weish was the only person he talked to about it. And if you don't know what Steve Weish looks like, you can guess why he was the only person he talked to about it. It was weeks later when he took a knee in San Diego that most of this stuff became far more well-known, and the hashtag incident went viral. But I mentioned Weiss for a purpose. Newsroom diversity matters. Because in a situation like that, Kaepernick probably wouldn't have felt comfortable discussing that with just any reporter in that room. And that matters. Because those are the lower levels of sort of filtration that matter when it comes to coverage of sports and why having different people around instantly helps you. It's not just so that you can pop up and say, nah, fam, that's racist. Don't do that. Don't do this. It's because when the people you're covering feel as represented as they should, well, you're probably just going to get better stories. And it's just plain better for business. On a merit front, not just an optics front. Think about it. What if that happens and he doesn't say anything about it? Maybe it doesn't get reported, and maybe this isn't even happening. But he wanted it to be known. And he chose a writer of color to talk to about it. And now we are where we are. So if you're boycotting something or you want to lend your voice to a cause, think about that one. Who we got telling these stories? On top of the fact that people are getting gunned down in these streets by police officers whose lives are oftentimes never really changed, or they're getting hired back. Whether Colin Kaepernick plays again in the NFL or not, we don't know. But at this stage, some of these protests might be a little misguided. Coming up, the 25th anniversary of the Dream Team winning the gold medal in the 92 Olympics is today. I'm Clinton Yates, filling in for Bomani Jones.
Thanks for listening to the Right Time Podcast. Please come back tomorrow for more. And don't forget to listen to the Right Time with Bomani Jones from 4 p.m. to 7 Eastern on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app.
Okay, Kevin, for the grand prize of $1 million. What color is the White House?
I know this.
5 seconds.
Oh, switching to Geico could save you a bunch of money on car insurance?
Okay. Judges? That's true, Kevin. They'll allow it. Congratulations. You're a winner.
Woo! Geico, because saving 15% or more on car insurance is always a great answer.
Welcome to the Right Time Podcast. The Right Time with Bomani Jones.
Daddy, there goes that man. You're listening to The Right Time with Bomani Jones on ESPN Radio. My name is Clinton Yates, filling in on a Tuesday. ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance, and all guests on The Right Time up here via the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Get in touch with us through the 1-800-Flowers.com Twitter feed, at ESPN Radio, at Clinton Yates. Little nostalgia day here. 25 years ago today, the Dream Team was awarded gold at the 1992 Barcelona Summer Olympics. They crushed everybody. Roster was stacked. Jordan literally in his prime. Win-loss 8-0. They scored 117.3 points per game. Differential 43.8. I need glasses. They're blowing people out by 40 points a game. And it wasn't just the games. It was everything around it. Guys were taking pictures during the game, asking their teammates to photograph them with the stars while they're getting destroyed. The guys were gallivanting around Europe. The stories coming out of that were legendary. People forget about the story about the college team they got beat by. The late, great Chuck Daly was the head coach. There's so many stories around the Dream Team. There's a cottage industry of documentaries around them alone. As there deserve to be. Because there's so many ridiculous little side tales going on as well. The main one of which being Jordan keeping Isaiah Thomas off the team. The pettiest move of all time. A secondary one being Christian Laettner making the team. Number one at all, number two over Shaquille O'Neal. That was controversial at the time. That was like the beginning of Hot Take Yates for those of you who are inquiring. I remember being real mad about that. Like as a kid. Thinking, this doesn't seem right. This doesn't seem fair. And that's when you could tell, oh, that guy's getting certain things that other people aren't getting. This isn't going to turn into a whole Christian Laettner thing because it's not that serious. But the main thing that happened with the Dream Team was obviously the growth of the game. The world realized, basketball is tight at the highest level. Forget about this college nonsense with refs and game officials cooking up books to give people gold medals. Just get the best dudes out there and let them run and dunk. Games started growing a lot around the globe. Asia, Europe, mainly. Even where the game had already was held in relatively high esteem. The popularity of that team boosted the value and the global reach of the NBA. But what's most funny to me about every single thing relating to the Dream Team is how their imprint affected American minds for what appears to be time immemorial. Like that one tournament, those 8 games, every American who watched that, maybe not every, but a lot, are basically going to go to their deathbeds thinking that they should never see the U.S. basketball team lose a game ever again. Like, it's not exceptionalism. Actually, it is, but that's a different discussion as well. But everybody's just like, oh, yeah, come on. This is what we do. It's like nobody even thought at the time that that meant, yeah, everybody else is going to get a little better. And it's going to happen a lot sooner than you think. Not to say that the U.S. has just run out every tournament from here on out. They've had some rather famous L's. But what's funny to me is how much that storyline is still the main narrative with pretty much every single thing surrounding USA basketball. It's a matter of disproving the exceptionalism. Well, I mean, you know, what's going on here? Looked like we had a little struggle against Australia. I had to look up from my tablet and see the score. Delhi's out here going nuts, and Patty Mills looks like he's having a good time. What is the problem? Well, you know, you sort of probably should have changed your oil like 2,000 miles ago. Coolant's a little low. Radio's been broke. You know, got to have a little maintenance. Just because you got a Ferrari doesn't mean that that bad boy's going to run smooth every single time you turn the key. And it's still so amazing to me how the one thing so many sports fans are going to hold on to is the notion that they're offended by anything less than absolute perfection from USA basketball. And it makes me laugh because is that always going to trump the actual game in your eyes? Like, what if you got a tournament in the Olympics, Shannon, that was just a bomb tournament? Like, okay, say U.S. wins or whoever wins. Like, if you got a lot of close games with a lot of different styles of play and a lot of different things that you aren't used to seeing, could you walk away satisfied if you knew the overall level of basketball was higher than just 40-point blowouts every week?
I think basketball fans who pay attention would probably understand, but for the casual fan who only pays attention to USA basketball every 4 years, they want 40-point blowouts, and that's all they're going to be satisfied with, even though we understand that the rest of the world has gotten better and has come a long way in these past 25 years. For some, for a lot, for the majority, they still look at it as, hey, well, every team representing USA has to be similar to the Dream Team in regards to the blowouts.
That's disrespectful to the Dream Team, in my opinion. You know what I mean? Understand what y'all had. That was the Dream Team. It wasn't just that they were the USA men's basketball team. There's a reason they had that name. Don't get me started on the Dream Team 2 and the Redeem Team. I'm not even going to acknowledge that. There was a reason they had that name. It wasn't just about their Americanism. That was the best collection of basketball players ever assembled in the history of the world. Of course they were blowing people out by 40. Sure, they might have lost focus during the preamble and lost to a college team who was out there playing them hard as they could. But if you're a casual fan, and I don't mean a casual fan of the Olympics, I mean a casual fan of basketball, I would presume that a better tournament overall would be more entertaining to you. Maybe not. You're listening to The Right Time with Bomani Jones. I'm Clinton Yates filling in here on ESPN Radio. Celebrating the 25th anniversary of the Dream Team, winning the gold medal at the 1992 Barcelona Olympics. I got to say, I'm personally looking forward to the day when USA basketball isn't expected to win every game. If for only a competitive psychological interest standpoint. Like, it's not healthy for me as a fan to look at every game as a failure that's not a blowout. That is in fact gotten boring to me at this point. And I know Bomani always says beat him down, yada yada. But for me, in the very specific cadre of Olympic basketball, y'all like the tournaments to be fun. I'm fine with them not being completely one-sided at all times. It does not inherently bother me as an American, as a basketball fan, or as a sports fan to know that the globe is actually improving at a little something I like to call baloncesto. And as this continues to happen, it will thus make the NBA better too. Styles will develop that get better. You've already seen this. The way the NBA looks now is a direct result of the global influence on the game. Guys from other places coming in with just different styles of play entirely. That if they're good enough, you just got to adapt to. Never mind the diversity component. The NBA is playing games in Africa these days. They were in Joburg last week. My man Mark Spears from The Undefeated was down there covering that bad boy. The global diversity of the game is a good thing, not just, as I said before, for posterity's sake, but for the product itself. And the Dream Team kicked that off. Sure, they knew that it was going to be big, but I don't think there was any way that anybody could know what was going to come in the next 25 years. And what we have now is great. Even if it means USA doesn't always win the gold. Coming up, the 50 greatest black athletes of all time. The Undefeated did a survey. It's caused a little bit of controversy. I'm Clinton Yates, filling in for Bomani Jones on ESPN Radio. This is The Right Time.
The Right Time with Bomani Jones.
Back to The Right Time with Bomani Jones. I'm Clinton Yates, filling in on this Tuesday and all week, by the by. Be down in New Orleans tomorrow on the flow at NABJ. That should be fun. ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance, and all guests on The Right Time up here via the Shell Penzo Performance Line. Get in touch with us through the 1-800-Flowers.com Twitter feed, at Clinton Yates, at ESPN Radio. I write for The Undefeated, for those of you who don't know that, when I'm not yakking on this mic. And today, the site released the final 10 entries to the top 50 black athletes of all time list. We partnered with SurveyMonkey to make this list happen. Over 10,000 adults were surveyed, and they had to base it on 3 separate criteria: dominance, inspiration, and impact on society. Now, just the top 10 were released today, but there were 50 overall. We discussed them earlier in the program. The number 1 overall black athlete was Michael Jordan. Michael Jeffrey Jordan from North Carolina. Number 2 was Jackie Robinson. Number 3 was Muhammad Ali. Shannon, you want to round out the top 10 for the people?
All right, the top 10. So Willie Mays came in at number 4. Jesse Owens was 5th. Number 6, Serena Williams. Hank Aaron came in at number 7. Simone Biles was 8th. Number 9, Gabby Douglas. And rounding out the top 10, Jerry Rice.
Okay. Gabby Douglas and Simone Biles there created a fair amount of controversy on the interwebs. And like I said, this was a survey, not a list we wrote ourselves. 10,000 plus adults were asked about this. And these were the names that came out with all the other metrics put together. Now, the reason why Gabby Douglas and Simone Biles matter is obvious. We ain't seen no black women in gymnastics forever. So, it's easy to say, oh, well, when stacked up against everybody else, how is it possible that 2 girls, 2 women who did something so recently are so high on the list? Well, you just answered your own question. It was recently, and we ain't ever seen it before. Point blank. I can understand why people would consider that to be such a big deal at this moment, particularly if you are otherwise into gymnastics. Listen, not everybody is a casual gymnastics fan. And apparently there's a lot more people who follow this and care about this than I would have said I knew about in my social circle. But the numbers are what they are. There's some omissions. There's some some lower ranked people, probably more so than there should be.
I have one that made me raise my eye a bit, looking at the rankings on this list, and they had Steph Curry at number 28 and LeBron James at 29.
Yeah, I don't really understand that because LeBron to me is woefully underranked. Like, I don't know. I mean, I guess I just think that people have a reverse recency bias, or they're over accommodating for it. But don't get it twisted. What you're looking at right now with LeBron is extremely remarkable. Forget about the rings. LeBron has done every single thing right since he was 15 years old, and he's been in the public eye that whole time. It's kind of unbelievable when you actually think about it. Goes into the league, says, "Nah, I'm cool with my representation. I'm going to hire my squad." People were like, "Word, you're really going to just hire your boys to like legit run your operation?" People forget what the narrative around that was at the time. Oh, LeBron's selfish. He's going to throw it away with his crew. Doesn't know what he's doing. Trusting his boys. We've all seen everybody have their downfall with their boys. Well, guess what? He's got a lifetime contract with Nike now. How about that? Worked out for old Bron. And by worked out, he meant he had a plan the whole time. Executed that. To a T. And now, guy's building a media empire as well. This stuff doesn't just happen. So LeBron is mad underrated on this list, if you ask me personally. You listen to The Right Time with Bomani Jones. I'm Clinton Yates, filling in here on a Tuesday. But the main omission that drives me up a wall is Deion Sanders. Now, whenever Deion's name comes up, the Bo Jackson people of the world start chiming in, talking about, well, what about Bo? Bo knows. Bo was a freak athlete. Bo did this. Bo did that. Bo did a lot. Yeah. And Bo was a better baseball player than Deion. But I'm not going to take away from a guy for injury. But I'm certainly not going to add to a guy for potential. So when we talk about Bo, you got to end it with what happened. You can't jump on me talking about, well, if it hadn't, well, you know what, it did. And that's no knock on Bo. That's just the reality of what happened with his career. Deion Sanders, on the other hand, had a long and fruitful career. Only man to ever play in a World Series and a Super Bowl. Sidebar, in college, he once played in the first game of a college baseball doubleheader, left that joint, went and ran a 4x1 track relay, came back, played the second game of the doubleheader. And in the pros, played in an NFL game, got to the chopper, as Arnold would say, and went and played in a baseball game in the major leagues. Dog, that's unheard of. Sure, you had guys that played two sports. Brian Jordan comes to mind. There's a couple other people that come to mind. Some people don't know that Danny Ainge was a big baseball player too, sidebar. Top picks in cap space. I'm kidding. But Deion was the best at it. And he was an incredible football player. Besides the fact that he was my sort of swag architect as an athlete. I wore 21 in all three sports I played because I loved him so much. He rewrote the rules in college for eligibility when it came to coming out. He pulled up to a game in a rivalry in a white limo and told the whole opposing team he was going to the league off them, and he did. His first touch with an NFL football, he fumbled and then picked it up and ran it into the house. He had the best celebration dance, touchdown dance rather, not celebration, of all time. How Deion doesn't make this list from any sports fan who's been alive for the past 30 years, I have no idea. And let me leave you with this one Deion nugget. That's the most important one. When you look good, you feel good. And when you feel good, you play good. And when you play good, they pay good. That's all that matters. Coming up, going to talk to Marquis Daisy, film director. I'm Clinton Yates, filling in for Bomani Jones. It's The Right Time on ESPN Radio.
The Right Time with Bomani Jones.
Rocking the mic right on The Right Time with Bomani Jones. My name is Clinton Yates, filling in on a Tuesday. ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance, and all guests on The Right Time appear via the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Get in touch with us through the 1-800-Flowers Twitter feed, at ESPN Radio, at Clinton Yates. You know, nothing makes a summer birthday or anniversary more magical than 1-800-Flowers.com. Right now, when you order a dozen multicolored roses for only $29.99, you'll get another dozen absolutely free. Go to 1-800-Flowers.com/ESPN. Joining us right now on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line is Marquis Daisy, director of Baltimore Boys, 30 for 30, that airs tonight on ESPN at 8 p.m. Marquis, let me tell you off top. I'm a 36-year-old man that was born and raised in the District of Columbia. I am a Georgetown Warriors fan, so I am familiar with the story of most of these young men going back to the time that I was a kid. But please do just describe off the break what Baltimore Boys is in terms of the subject matter and the topics at hand.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys for having me. But you know what? Like, interestingly enough, like this film, and I know that your recollection of that team is, you know, their excellence on a basketball court. But really, this film is really just using basketball as sort of like the core of the reason why we know this team. But really, the biggest character in this film to me is the city of Baltimore, and you know what it was like growing up there in the early 1980s. You're coming off of the assassination of Martin Luther King, the death of Malcolm X, and really you have these four boys, Muggsy Bogues, Reggie Lewis, Reggie Williams, and David Wingate, you know, ascending to greatness in the early 1980s, but really coming off of that, dramatic event. And it's really the story of, you know, these four boys and their coach, Bob Wade, who should have really never made it out of that city, you know, with everything that they had to face during that time. So really, that's what the film is about. And, you're going to see some great highlights of those guys in high school and everything that they've done. But I think that for the person who doesn't necessarily, you know, follow basketball and isn't necessarily a big basketball fan, this is a film that's going to really resonate with everyone.
You're from Baltimore, correct?
No. Actually, I'm from Brooklyn, New York.
Okay, my bad.
And
I got that wrong. Shows how much I know.
Yeah, no, but here's the thing: a little bit of trivia. Shannon and I, we went to junior high school together. How about that?
That's what I was getting at. How long did it take you to
Clearpool, PS35, representing Brooklyn Bed-Stuy, son?
Yes, sir. Nice.
No, what I was going to say is, what was it like making this movie with Baltimore as the backdrop, considering the sort of, I don't want to say political, but the social scenario that it's been in most recently in the news and over the course of time since the subject matter has passed?
You know what? This film has been one of the more challenging films that I've done. You know, I directed the Randy Moss 30 for 30. I also did a small film on Oscar Robertson called Black Hoosiers. But this film has been very different, and here's the reason why. When you look at like Rand University, you're looking at Randy Moss as the central figure, and you're looking at Rand, West Virginia as the city, as the backdrop. This film, you have four different characters, four different basketball players, and you had a coach, and you had a city. So that was really, really challenging. It's just kind of like in 77 minutes, in a 77-minute format, how do you spread the love between all of them? Reggie Lewis's story really takes off because he's the person out of all of them who, he never started a high school game. He always came off the bench for Coach Bob Wade, but he went on to become the best player of them all. And at the end of the day, he died. He passed away on a basketball court. So it's really easy for that narrative to really take control of the entire film. But from a filmmaking's perspective, it's really important for you to stay disciplined and understand that this film is about something, bigger, and that, there are more characters rather than letting just one subject sort of take over. So that's been the most challenging part of it all, is that, from a television standpoint, Reggie Lewis's story is the story that sort of, most people will be really, interested in because there's tragedy at the end. But, you know, you need to stay disciplined as a filmmaker and just understand that, like, you know, you got to always bring it back to Baltimore. You got to always bring it back to Dunbar High School. So that was the biggest challenge throughout this course.
We're talking with Marquis Daisy, director of Baltimore Boys, 30 for 30, tonight on ESPN at 8 p.m. I ask every movie director and filmmaker this when I have them on the radio. What did you learn about yourself while making this film?
You know what I learned about myself is that, you know, as I do these films, really every film that I do is really just sort of a microcosm of my own upbringing. You know, when you talk about Rand University, you know, you talk about the 7-Eleven, which was essentially their college. Shannon will tell you, to us, that was the corner store. That was where, you know, these dudes who played at Boys and Girls High School in Bed-Stuy, who were great athletes, ended up. At the end of the day, they were just hanging on a corner at the end of the day. For Baltimore Boys, you know, I grew up in a situation where, you know, in the late 80s, you know, you're talking about crack cocaine and you're talking about heroin, you're talking about all of those drugs that really took over, you know, urban communities. That was nothing new to me. That was what I saw in my household. That was what I saw, you know, in the community. So when I started to, you know, research this film, I was like, that's a part of this film that I can't ignore. You're talking about kids who grew up in that environment, and they used that as sort of fodder to get out of that environment, and they used that as a driving force to become something greater. So that's what I learned from myself, about myself, was just kind of like, you know, when I'm telling these stories, really, in a weird way, I'm telling my own story through the lens of people who are much more famous or much more notable than myself.
Mm. He's Marquis Daisy. He's the director of Baltimore Boys. 30 for 30 airs tonight at 8 p.m. on ESPN. Thank you, Marquis.
Awesome. Thank you guys for having me.
Anytime. Shannon, I want to talk to you about this because I think that there's an important thing that Marquis brought up here in terms of that theme. And be it Brooklyn, be it Northwest D.C., be it Baltimore, that struggle of being able to get out of what could potentially be a bad situation is one that I always go back to as a storyline I'm interested in. I'll say this one more thing, which is that a lot of people don't understand that to be a young black kid in those years, it wasn't always about living in super poverty or some super thug life for things to go wrong.
Right.
It was about just not sliding enough or being in the wrong place at the wrong time to get caught up in the system, or missing that one grade that was going to mean you couldn't go to that school out of town or across town that was going to let you maybe do something else that was going to prevent you, not from having the worst life in the world, but just from living on the same block your whole life. Talk to me a little bit about that, because I know we're from the same era in that regard.
Right, and it's so easy to fall in those traps, and those pitfalls are there because you get comfortable with your surroundings, whether it's the block, the corner, you know, and go through the same rigmarole as everybody else. So to be able to come through that says a lot, and I'm extremely proud of Marquis, especially when going back to with the Rand University, and I was following some of his work throughout the years and some of the music videos that he's done, because it's so easy for every story that we see, for every example. There are tens to thousands of stories of these guys who didn't make it that you knew was going to make it, whether it was on the court, on the field, rapping, doing whatever, you know, or the smartest kid in the class. So to see somebody that I knew as a kid and it come to this level makes me extremely proud.
Very cool.
And you know, to have two black kids grew up single parent households in Bed-Stuy to both now be here talking on ESPN radio today, and one of us has an Emmy. that's Marquis, of course, but that's pretty dope. So to sit back and realize how lucky and fortunate you are to be able to have people in your life and to take advantage of some opportunities, because you know, you have these shots. Like I had an opportunity to do a film. The film and photography school up in Harlem when I was around that age, and to have people identify that you have an ability and to be able to build on that says a lot, because I think that's another thing. I know I'm going off on a tangent here, but to have people in your community who identify that, hey, this kid has a talent, and doesn't have to be athletics related, and will support you and say, hey, this is what you need to do to get to the next level. This is what you need to do to get out, says a whole lot. So more than just the kid being able to play a sport, it's the people around them that support them, whether it's family or people in the neighborhood that can cultivate and get that young man out. Because so often we have the people who are stuck and trapped, and they want you to be trapped there with them. And so, I know what's going on.
No, I hear you, man. That's why I brought it up. I knew you would have a lot to say about it. That's the deal, America. Not every black kid or every black family lives in the inner city, and not everybody is stricken with the worst situation in the world. The difference is that if one thing goes wrong, it might all change. And if one thing goes right, it's unbelievable how much potential there is to unlock. And that's why when you let us tell our own stories, you learn a little something about yourself, too. Coming up, if you haven't heard, Michael Jordan deserved the #1 spot on the Undefeated 50 Greatest Black Athletes list. Don't at me. I'm Clinton Yates. I'm filling in for Bomani Jones on ESPN Radio. This is The Right Time.
The Right Time with Bomani Jones.
Check here on The Right Time with Bomani Jones. I'm Clinton Yates, wrapping things up here. ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance. Guests on The Right Time appear via the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. And you can still hit me up via the 1-800-Flowers Twitter feed at Clinton Yates at ESPN Radio. Want to thank the coach, Herm Edwards, for joining us earlier in the program. Told a great story about Vinny Testaverde, in case you missed that. Herm on the celly at halftime, knowing his team needed quarterback help. Called up old VT, who was chilling on the couch watching the game, and said, sure, I'll come on out. Want to also thank Marquis Daisy, who joined us, director of Baltimore Boys, the 30 for 30 film that airs tonight on ESPN at 8 p.m. And quick programming alert, the show will be in New Orleans for the rest of the week, where we will be at the NABJ convention live on the floor. The National Association of Black Journalists has a convention every year. Obviously, a lot of people get together for it. It's a fun time. It's a productive time, a time of fellowship, Shannon, and a time of building. So we will be on the floor.
Hashtag get Shannon at NABJ next year. We're going to start a movement starting tomorrow.
Got to start the movement, little GoFundMe, but it should be a fun one. However, Shannon, tell them what they might have missed.
We know you can't be on top of all the news and information of the day. Now, if you haven't heard.
All right, the Undefeated released their top 10 of a poll that they did of the top black athletes. And, of course, no surprise here, Michael Jordan came in at #1. And if you haven't heard, here's Clinton Yates earlier today on The Right Time discussing the list.
So when you tell me that all Michael Jordan did was sell some shoes, well, A, you see how many shoes he sold, my guy? You taking a look at that brand recently? You want to understand what's going on there? Don't tell me that didn't have social impact. Positive, negative, political or not, the social imprint of Michael Jeffrey Jordan is major. Nike ain't Nike without Michael Jordan. And Nike pretty much runs everything now. Understand that. Also understand where the NBA fits into all this. When the NBA decided the global market was going to be something important was after the Dream Team became so popular in 1992 Olympics. 25th anniversary, shouts to the Dream Team. So think about how these things came together. Jordan's popularity from a marketing and a product standpoint, the popularity of the NBA from a global game standpoint, and thus by extension basketball. And then think about, plainly, the media world that exists now versus what existed when Ali was in his prime. On a simple numbers, eyeballs, and ears scale, there's no way you can really compete with Michael Jordan. He blew that all out of the water. And as an aside, this is sort of what comes up every single time I talk about who's better at basketball. It's impossible for some people to even take that out of their minds when they think about the actual basketball on the court when it comes to Jordan, because they can't get the marketing part out of the way. But if you're having a discussion about his overall impact on the globe as a black athlete, oh yeah, that's all there. And this is not to denigrate Ali's legacy by any stretch of the imagination. That would be ludicrous and foolhardy. But don't come at me with this nonsense about how Jordan was just another dude selling sneakers, and because he said Republicans buy them too, that he wasn't out there with a fist in the air, that somehow his social impact was unimportant. Don't be that person that conflates struggle with protest. Don't be that person that presumes that a black person's got to make somebody mad in order for their social impact to be of importance. All right? Jordan, as much as it pains me to say as a personal non-fan of his, is absolutely tremendously in the argument as the number one most impactful black athlete of all time. There's just no way around that.
All right, well said there, Clinton, and I don't have a smooth transition here, but I want to allow you enough time to get this in. Last night was the Bachelorette season finale, am I correct?
You are correct.
All right, what were your thoughts here?
All right, first of all, I just want to give a quick shout-out to Tiara R. Wilkins. She did a lot of our recaps. We did them together, and she, as a young black woman, approached this from a standpoint of watching another black woman, Rachel Lindsay, tackle all of these things that we dealt with the entire season. There was the racist character. There's a lot of dudes that weren't there for the right reasons. But this last episode was Garbaggio. First of all, the jump was 3 hours. All right? Your man might have fallen asleep on the couch, might have woke up, and it was still on. I was like, fam, what is going on here? How are we still watching this? And as it turns out, the dude who won sort of by default because she eliminated one guy, my man Eric, the brother, and then other homeboy who, as far as I'm concerned, just wasn't ready to marry a black woman. Fair enough. Dude was a white dude from Wisconsin who brought his boys on to talk about his tolerance. And the third dude was just there. So he won. And I was like, yo, how could you let this end this way? You had such a good season. And it just all petered out. It was not a good finale, and I don't think anybody who's a fan of that franchise would tell you it was, Shannon.
You fell for it.
Very major letdown. Yeah, well, I mean, I fell asleep is what I felt.
What I'm saying is you fell for it. The old banana in the tailpipe. Because now you're upset about how it ended, so now you're going to watch because they're going to have to do another season or a follow-up to this.
You know who the next Bachelorette should be? Cardi B. All right? I'm officially starting a campaign. Get her on that show. She's the realest one in America. And my love for her knows no bounds. We'll be in New Orleans for the rest of the week. Give me some advice on what to do there. Street art and vinyl. Up next, Sarah Spain and Jason Fitz. I'm Clinton Yates, filling in for Bomani Jones on The Right Time.
Thanks for listening to The Right Time podcast. Please come back tomorrow for more. And don't forget to listen to The Right Time with Bomani Jones from 4 p.m. to 7 Eastern on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app.
Okay, Kevin, for the grand prize of $1 million, what color is the White House?
I know this.
5 seconds.
Oh, switching to Geico could save you a bunch of money on car insurance?
Okay. Judges,